The carnival arrived on the back of a storm. I hadn't heard about it beforehand. It wasn't in the local paper or online. No flyers fluttered down Main Street. No word of mouth buzzed in the cafes. Yet on that overcast evening, as the sky churned gray and rain threatened to break loose, I saw it. The twisting spires of a Ferris wheel, the vibrant stripes of a massive tent, the blinking, scattered lights of rides in motion. The carnival sprawled over the old fairgrounds, a place that had been barren for as long as I could remember. Drawn by curiosity, I parked my car near the entrance. The place seemed alive, buzzing with the sounds of laughter and music. But as I stepped closer, the hum of life grew stranger, less joyous. The laughter had an edge to it, hollow, as if it belonged to something unfamiliar. There was no ticket booth, just a massive archway crowned by a sign that read, "Welcome to Carnival Nocturne." The words glimmered in faint, golden letters, their edges blurred as though shifting with the wind. A man stood beneath it, clad in a striped suit and a top hat that seemed a size too large for his head. He had a gaunt face, his pale skin stretched tightly over sharp cheekbones. "Welcome, traveler," he crooned, his voice smooth but dripping with something unspoken. "Looking for a thrill?" I hesitated. His eyes gleamed like a predator's, too sharp and watchful. He gestured with a bony hand toward the main thoroughfare, where rides spun, food stands beckoned, and the air carried the sweetness of caramel and cotton candy. "It's free," he added, as if reading my hesitation. "All it costs is time." The way he said it, time, made the hair on my arms rise. But the allure of the lights, the music, and the otherworldly atmosphere was too strong. I nodded, muttering a thanks as I passed under the arch. The carnival was different. The rides were familiar, spinning teacups, a carousel, bumper cars, but their designs were almost grotesque. The carousel's horses seemed to twist slightly, their manes flowing unnaturally. The mirrors on the teacups reflected distorted faces. Still, I convinced myself it was all clever theming, an attempt to make the place memorable. Then I saw it, the funhouse. Its facade was enormous, nearly twice the size of any funhouse I'd ever seen. Grotesque, smiling faces jutted out from its walls, their mouths wide and painted in garish colors. A single towering clown greeted visitors at the entrance, one hand pointing toward the door, the other holding a sign. "Face your fears." Beneath it, smaller words whispered a promise. "No one leaves unchanged." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Before I could step closer, the striped suit man appeared at my side. His grin had widened, teeth glinting in the carnival lights. "It calls to you, doesn't it?" he said softly, almost reverently. "It's not just a house of fun, it's an experience." "What kind of experience?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant. "A personal one," he replied. "Go on, take the first step. The house will do the rest." I should have turned back then. But the lure of it, the mysterious promise, the challenge, was irresistible. I walked up the short staircase and through the yawning mouth of the funhouse. As I crossed the threshold, the world outside fell silent and the door slammed shut behind me. The air inside was stale and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang that clung to the back of my throat. Darkness enveloped me, and for a moment I wondered if I'd walked into an empty warehouse. But then the floor beneath me shifted. A soft click echoed in the void, and the walls around me erupted in sudden, blinding color. Neon lights buzzed to life, casting sickly greens, blues, and reds onto the walls. Carnival music played, slow and warped, as though the record was melting. Ahead of me stood a doorway, flanked by shimmering curtains. A plaque above it read, "Room 1, Lucky Draw." My heart pounded as I stepped through, my hands brushing the curtains. The room was circular, the walls lined with shelves holding small glass jars. Each jar contained something: marbles, trinkets, and teeth. At the center stood a wheel, much like the ones you'd see at a boardwalk. Its segments were blank except for cryptic symbols etched in uneven lines. A heart, an eye, a key, a clock. The wheel began to spin on its own. A voice crackled from a hidden speaker. It wasn't the smooth Barker's voice. It was something mechanical and lifeless. Spin the wheel to reveal your prize. Every spin brings you closer to your destiny. I hesitated. The symbols glowed faintly, their light pulsing in time with the music. The air grew colder, pressing against my skin like a warning. I reached out, gripping the wheel. The wood was cold and rough under my palm. As I spun it, the entire room seemed to lean into the motion. The jars rattled faintly on their shelves, and the lights flickered in rhythm with the spinning. The wheel slowed. My breath caught as the pointer hovered between the heart and the clock before landing on the key. A faint chime sounded, and the floor beneath me shifted. A trapdoor creaked open, revealing a dark staircase spiraling downward. "Proceed," the voice intoned. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to find the entrance and leave. But the door had vanished, replaced by a blank wall. The only way forward was down. The stairs groaned beneath my weight as I descended. With each step, the air grew heavier, charged with a hum I felt in my teeth. The stairway ended at another doorway. This one was marked with a single word: reflections. I swallowed hard and stepped through. Inside, mirrors lined the walls, but none showed my reflection. Instead, they displayed distorted scenes, images of myself in strange, impossible moments. In one, I was walking alone down an empty street. In another, I stood at a cliff's edge, staring into a void. As I moved deeper into the room, the mirrors grew darker. The reflections stopped showing me. Instead, I saw eyes, dozens of them, watching me from every angle. "Face your fears," the voice whispered, close to my ear. I turned, but no one was there. The oppressive weight of the mirrors pressed on my chest as I stood, transfixed by the eyes staring back at me. The room's air seemed thicker now, like the walls themselves were alive, closing in inch by inch. Every surface reflected something different, an unsettling mosaic of scenes that felt too intimate, too real. One mirror displayed a memory I had long buried, a school play where I'd forgotten my lines and stood frozen under the spotlight. But it wasn't just the memory. It was wrong. The audience's faces were blurred, their heads slowly turning toward me, their collective gaze a sharp blade slicing into my composure. Another showed me sitting at a desk, surrounded by piles of unfinished work. The room was dark, the light from the computer screen flickering. As I stared, the scene changed. Paper spilled off the desk, burying me. My mirrored self clawed at the piles, but it was endless, the weight crushing. I turned away, my stomach churning. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked aloud. My voice echoed, hollow and lost. The mirrors shifted, their reflections distorting. A new scene formed in the largest one, the Carnival Barker. He stood in the center of the funhouse, his crooked grin wider than ever. His eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unblinking. He held a string in his hand, thin and delicate, leading somewhere out of view. "Do you see now?" a voice whispered behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. The Barker's reflection began to move. He tugged on the string, and I heard a faint noise, a distant creak, like a door opening. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, not mine. From the shadows behind me, a figure emerged. I stumbled back, but it stopped just shy of the mirror's edge. It was me, or something wearing my face. The figure's movements were wrong. its limbs slightly out of sync, its expression a warped parody of my own. The Barker laughed, his voice echoing around the room. "You are not a visitor here," he said, his tone mocking. "You are a player, and every player must learn their role." Before I could respond, the figure stepped forward, its reflection melding with mine. For a moment, the room darkened completely, the mirror's faint glow the only light. Then, the wall in front of me opened with a groan, revealing a new corridor. I took a hesitant step forward. The Barker's voice followed me, fading into the distance. "The funhouse knows you now. You'll never be the same." The corridor was narrow, its walls painted in swirling patterns that seemed to move as I walked. The floor beneath me felt unstable, like it might give way at any moment. Somewhere ahead, faint music played, a warped version of a lullaby, the notes drawn out and discordant. At the end of the corridor, I found a door. It was small, almost childlike, its frame painted in soft pastels that felt jarringly out of place. Above it, etched in looping script, were the words, "The heart of the funhouse." My fingers trembled as I reached for the doorknob, which was warm to the touch despite the chill of the air. The door creaked open, revealing a circular room bathed in an eerie, golden light. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it sat a clock. It was ornate, its face surrounded by intricate carvings of carnival scenes, rides, games, and performers frozen in time. The clock's hands ticked slowly, though its face had no numbers, only strange symbols I couldn't decipher. Around the room, figures stood motionless, shrouded in shadow. As I stepped closer, I realized they weren't statues. They were people. Visitors like me. Their faces were blank, their eyes empty, their bodies frozen mid-motion as though paused in the middle of a story. "Every player must pay their price," the Barker's voice boomed. He was there now, though I hadn't seen him enter. He stood by the clock, his long fingers brushing its surface. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. He grinned, tilting his head. "This place runs on time. The clock takes it, little by little, in exchange for your passage. But some give more than others." My breath hitched as I looked at the frozen figures. "Are they alive?" The Barker laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Alive? In a sense, they remain as long as the funhouse needs them, and now it needs you." "No," I said, backing away. "I didn't agree to this." "You did the moment you stepped inside," he replied smoothly. "But there is a way out. Every player has a choice." He gestured to the clock. Its hands had stopped moving, pointing to two symbols, a heart and a mask. "Take control of the game, or let it control you," he said. "Claim the heart, and you may leave, at a cost. Take the mask, and you'll remain, but you'll no longer care." The room felt suffocating, the weight of his words pressing down on me. My gaze flicked between the frozen figures, the clock, and the Barker's unreadable expression. "What's the cost?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The cost is yours to discover, but you'll find it unforgettable." The hands of the clock began to move again, ticking faster and faster. The Barker stepped back, fading into the shadows. "Choose wisely," his voice echoed. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I reached for the clock. My hand hovered over the clock, trembling as the symbols pulsed faintly, casting ghostly shadows across the room. The heart glowed with a dull, ruby-red light, while the mask shimmered silver, its surface rippling like a disturbed pond. The ticking grew louder, each beat hammering against my resolve, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like an iron shroud. The Barker's voice whispered from the darkness, low and serpentine. "The choice isn't just yours. It's the funhouse's too. It already knows you." The frozen figures surrounding the room seemed to lean closer, their shadowy forms stretching unnaturally. Though their faces were blank, I felt their stares, heavy and watchful. The air vibrated with an almost imperceptible hum, like the tension of a bowstring pulled taut. "What happens if I choose the mask?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the relentless ticking.